screen again. So welcome everyone to another training session on Microsoft Dynamics CRM. So my name here is Angelina Jacobs. I'll just get my slideshow going so you guys can see my contact information. I'm a CRM consultant with CRM Dynamics located in Mississauga. Feel free to take down my contact information if at any time you want to provide any feedback, have any questions. You can certainly send me a direct message and I can help you out there. So for today, we are going to be covering workflows. So what are they? How can they be used? The different types of workflows available. And then we'll go through a quick example of creating one, and I'll talk about the available options and steps when creating a workflow. Now, I will be showing in a CRM 2015 environment, so depending on the version you have, it may look a bit different, but again, the concept is pretty well the same. So what are workflows and how do we use them? Well, workflows are a great tool that allow automation of tasks within your CRM. They can be automatically triggered or they can actually be manually triggered by a user. I'm going to jump right into the CRM environment and to creating a workflow, but I will explain the different options and steps as we go, and then we'll create just a simple workflow together. So where do you find the settings to be able to create the workflows? Well, in your CRM, if you go into settings, and then you'll see here within settings, I'm already in it, but I'll show you the scroll in 2015. There's a processes entity here. This will show you a list of all the activated as well as draft processes available. So I'm going to create a new one, just the new button up here. And you'll see this pop up here. So you do have to name it first before we get into the details of the workflow. For this one, I'm just going to create a pretty simple workflow, but you can get into some pretty complex ones in terms of automating your business processes. For this example, I'll just create a basic one that can really help or benefit a sales team as well as a company's response to leads. So this is going to be a more lead alert workflow. So I'm just going to say lead, assign, alert example. So I've named it. Category, you'll see you have action, business process flow, which is what we covered in last month's webinar, dialogue, and then workflow. So I'm going to select workflow, and then I have to pick the entity that it's going to be based in. For this one, I'm going to choose leads. So I'm choosing the lead entity here. You'll see that this check mark here, run this workflow in the background, is automatically selected. That's the default. What this does is it just means that the workflow will run in the background when the resources are available to the system. So it's asynchronous versus synchronous. For this one, I'm actually going to uncheck this because I want the workflow that we create to run immediately. And I'm doing a new blank process. However, you can use existing templates if those are created. I'm just going to press OK. And I just saw a question by someone if a deck will be sent out after presentation. What will happen is after this presentation is done, we will upload it to our Learning Academy on our website. So I will give you that information at the end, but it will be available for viewing afterwards. Okay, so now that I've named my workflow, we have the options here. So you'll see I have my process name, activate as a process. You'll see here the available to run options, and you'll see that I've unchecked this run the workflow in the background. So what this means again is that it's going to be an immediate run once all my conditions are met. There's also an option for to mark it as an on-demand process. What this does is that it makes the workflow available as an option for the user to run within the entity or record that they're in. And what that does is it's on the screen. It's usually the 3 dots or ellipses is what they're called. And what you can do is just select that, and then there'll be an option to run the available workflow. So that's kind of how you would have a manually triggered workflow. You can have an synchronous workflow be an on-demand process as well if you choose to. but really it should be running after its conditions are met. There's also as a child process, and what that does is it just means that it will be available to be started after another workflow. So it kind of depends on a parent workflow that is created. So I'll go through the different options available when creating. You'll see here I have a scope. Right now it's defaulted to user. The options are user, business unit, parent, child business units, or organization. Now, if you select user, what happens is the workflow will run exclusively on records with the same owner as the workflow. So right now that would be me as the owner of the workflow. For business unit, what that means is that it just runs on the records owned by any user in the same business unit if you are set up with different business units. The parent child business units here, if this option is selected, the workflow runs exclusively on records owned by any user in the same business unit, or you can select organization here, and that just means it can be run on a record owned by any user. So for this one, I'm going to say organization, meaning it can run on any record, whether you're the owner or not. You'll see here the option to start when, and there's a few different options in here, so I'm going to go through those. The default selection is to start the workflow after the record is created, and that's pretty self-explanatory. The workflow will start once a record is created. You can have record status changes. So when the workflow will begin when a record status is changed within that selected entity, so within this lead one that we've selected. There's also the option to start when the record is assigned. So if a record gets assigned to a new user, that's when the workflow would start. There's also an option for record when a record fields change. So this is where you can select different records, or sorry, different fields within that record that if they get modified or changed, that will trigger the workflow to start. There's also the option for a record is deleted. So if you want a workflow to start once a record is deleted, that option is available as well. For this specific example, I am going to choose, or I'm going to uncheck the record is created, but I'm going to check record is assigned. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a workflow run that when a new lead comes in, if that lead gets assigned to a salesperson or CRM user, what will happen is we'll send out an alert to them saying that they've received a new lead, and then they can go in and check out that new lead. So it's a pretty basic one, but it's actually quite beneficial to a sales team, especially for having quick turnaround times on new leads that come into an organization. So I've selected record is to start the workflow after the record is assigned. You can execute as the owner of the workflow or the user who's making changes to the record. A lot of times I just choose the owner of the workflow. Depending on user security rules, sometimes if you select the second option, you can run into some errors if not all users have the proper security rules to run these workflows. So I have my settings now for my workflow. I'm going to go into the steps that are available to me. Now we're only going to use a few of them in the example here, but I will go through and explain each one. So you'll see here there's this add step. It's just being a little slow to open up, I guess. There we go. So the first thing here is a stage, and stages are used just to split a workflow into manageable sections, especially when you get into more complex and lengthy workflows. That's usually when you want to use different stages to split that up. There's a check condition. This is for the if and then statements, where you can check if this exists, then do this. So that's what this is. Conditional branch is grayed out right now, but that is because it can only be created directly after this check condition. And it kind of functions as the check condition is an if statement and then do this. And then this conditional branch is a otherwise, if this, then do this. You'll also see a default action here. And it's used to run a series of steps if the check condition and conditional branch statements here are not met or they fail. There's a create record step here, pretty self-explanatory. You can create a record based on certain things. Same with the update record. So you can update an existing record or update existing fields on a record to whatever value you desire. There's also an automatic assign record. So if certain conditions are met or certain fields get revised or so forth, you can assign a record automatically to a specific user or team. There's the send email, which is the one we're going to be using, which again, pretty self-explanatory. You can send an email based on certain conditions for your workflow. You can start a child workflow. That's where that other option up here about having child processes comes into play. So it can start, this workflow could start another child workflow that depends on it. There's the option to change the status of a record or the status field within a record. Again, depending on how your field or your records are set up, this could mean different things for you, but it just changes the status of the record. And then here we have a stop workflow, and this just stops the workflow with a status of either succeeded or completed, or it can be canceled. So for this workflow, we're just going to create a send email. And again, it's just going to be based off when a lead record gets assigned. And again, I'll point to the area I'm starting the workflow after the record is assigned. So you have the option to type in a description of the step here. So I'm just going to say send email to sales rep and regarding new lead. And you'll see here it's got the set create new message. You can use a template if you have those. I'm just going to create a brand new one for this. So if I click set properties, I'll get another window that comes up. And here's where I can configure my email template. You'll see here it's got a from field. This looks up to users within your system, depending who it should be from. You can also choose dynamic values so long as a user is in your system. So I'm just going to have it from the admin. It's a very generic email address. But in this to field, what I'm going to do is instead of selecting a specific user, I'm going to go over to the right here, and you'll see these dynamic values. So you'll see here it says look for, I'm looking within the lead entity, and then I'm going to look for the owner. So it's going to send to the owner of record. Now remember that when you assign a record, you're changing the owner. So that's why I'm clicking owner here to add in. So what it's going to do is it's going to send an email to the new owner of the lead record I'm assigning. So I add it, you see here, I click OK, and then you'll see here this dynamic value now exists in the to field for this email. You can also put blind copy anyone, if you wanted your sales manager to know everything that's being assigned out. You can put the specific user in there as well. You can put a subject in here. We can just call this new lead. We'll put an exclamation mark because it's exciting. And then I can also insert another dynamic value into here instead of just having the subject say new lead. So if you look over here on the right again, I'm looking in the lead entity, and then you'll see all the fields available to me that exist within that lead entity. So for this one, I'm just going to select the name. So it's going to say new lead, and then it's going to have the name of the lead included in that subject. So again, you'll see it's yellow here as a dynamic value. And what that means is that this value is going to change based on the record that gets assigned, correct? So I'm going to put a body in here. I'll just say hello, and I'll put the owner so it actually addresses the owner of this record. Owner, I'll add that in. And I'll just say you've been assigned a new lead. And what's great here is I can actually put in a hyperlink to that specific record so that when they receive this email, they can just click on that link and it'll bring them right into their CRM and that specific record they've been assigned. So where you do that, here you'll see this insert hyperlink. You might actually have the text depending on the version of CRM you have, but I'm going to click that. And another window pops up here for the insert hyperlink. You'll see here it says text to display. So I'm going to choose the same, the name of the lead as the text to display. Oops. But then the URL is actually going to be the record URL. So you'll see here this option, record URL. And then that way, that's the clickable link that will bring me right into the CRM record. Got some spacing here. There we go. And then I'm going to finish off the text here. I'll just say happy selling. You always want to wish your sales reps well. And then you can sign it with the name or the user who actually modified or assigned this record. So again, I'm going to the right here in these dynamic values. Instead of selecting the owner, I'm going to select the modified by, because when someone assigns a record, they're modifying that record, so it'll be their name that shows up here. I'm going to get rid of this because I don't want to add that. So you'll see here I added modified by. I'm going to click OK, and you'll see it shows up here, again, as a dynamic value. There are additional fields you can play with depending how you want to treat this email. So I can have, instead of delivery normal, you can do high. You can change number of delivery attempts and so forth. For the most part, though, I won't touch these fields for now. So once I'm done my email template, I go up here, I'm going to say save and close. Just takes a bit of time there. Oh, don't bother with that error message there. Okay, so now I've created this one step to send the email to the sales rep once they've been assigned a new lead. Then I'm going to add a second step just to stop the workflow as succeeded once this happens. So I'm clicking on add step, stop workflow, and you'll see it automatically defaults to stop workflow with a status of succeeded. So again, I'm just going to name this description. It makes it really easy then to follow the steps that are being created within this workflow. So stop workflow has succeeded. And that's pretty much all that we need to do for this particular workflow. I'm going to save it. And right now when it's saved, it's in a draft form. So it's not active. It's not doing anything in our system just yet, which is quite nice because you can continue to modify and revise your workflows before actually activating them and have them run in the system. So again, if you're working on this but then need to be on something else, just save it. It's in a draft form. You can leave and then come back to it and it won't have affected your system. Now we want to test this out. So we're going to have to activate this and then it becomes an active process in our system. So just up here, you'll see activate. It'll confirm with you that you do want to activate this process. You go, yep. And then you'll see how the fields up here have changed. So see now it has a deactivate button. So if you ever want to start working or do any modifications on this workflow, you do have to deactivate it, do the work, save it, and then activate again. And then you'll just have this close field. So it's an active workflow now. And again, I chose to run this as a synchronous workflow, meaning that it should run immediately versus the asynchronous or background workflows, which run when the system has resources available. So you can have a delay sometimes. So see here in my list, I have the workflow we just created, and it shows the primary entity that it's based on. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the lead entity here. So see I have a list of leads, and then I'm going to assign one to myself and test the workflow. So we'll pick this sample here. So you'll see up here that I'm not the owner of this current lead record, it's Ken. But let's say I want to assign it to myself, or Ken does, or sales manager, whoever has the proper security role to be able to do that. They can click up here and then see, sorry, I click in the 3 dots up here, ellipses. There's an option to assign. And then you'll see assign lead. I can assign to me, or there's the option to assign to another user or team. And this is great, especially for sales managers that they want to be the ones to approve assigning any leads or other accounts or records. They can be the only ones to be able to have this option if their security role allows so, and they can assign to the specific users they want or teams. So I'm just going to assign it to me. I'm going to go OK. You'll see it processed. And then you'll see up here that the owner has now changed to myself, Angelina. Now the workflow should have run immediately once I did that. Due to privacy reasons, I'm not going to show my own inbox, but I can show you if the workflow ran or not. As you'll see here on this screen, we have a social pane, and this is where you can see posts, activities, notes on this specific record. So if I go into activities, I should see, and here it is, I should see the activity of the email that went out regarding this record. So you'll see that this just went out. I'll open it up. It won't have sent from this demo just yet. And you'll see here's my template. So again, new lead, it's got the person's name, the lead name here, what it's regarding. And then you'll see my template down here. So again, it has the owner, which was me as I was assigned with this record. Happy selling. Again, my name is the signature, but that's because I was the user that assigned it to myself. If another user had done it, their name would be here. And then you'll see this clickable link. So if I click this, it should open up that lead record again. And voila, here it is. So we can say that the workflow ran and it ran correctly, and I was able to see a new lead that was assigned to myself. Now, if you are wondering, in these emails, not anyone can open up this link, so they have to be a user within your CRM. So if I click this and I wasn't signed into my CRM instance already, it would first have me do that. And if I wasn't a user, I wouldn't be able to sign in and see this record. So it's not just an open URL, you actually have to be a user able to access this record within CRM. And that, for the most part, completes our training on workflows. They certainly can become more complex. As you saw, there are many options available to you to automate a plethora of business processes. I will take a bit of time if you guys have some questions you want to put into the question box. Again, feel free. I'll show you my my contact information here. Feel free to email me with any feedback, with any further questions you might have. And stay tuned for next month's topic. It is data discovery. So we're going to be covering utilization of the information in your CRM. So it'll be things like advanced find, your queries, what to do with them, adding them to marketing lists, and so forth. So it'll be a good one. That, again, is the third Thursday every month. So November's is data discovery. If you have any questions, I will take the time now to look into the question box. And if not, thank you very much for attending, and we hope to see you in next month's webinar. A few people have asked if it's mandatory to add the stop workflow at the end of the workflow process. It is not. You don't have to include that. It is a great way just to know or to make sure you stop the workflow. One of the things you do have to avoid is infinite loops within workflows. So poorly designed workflows can actually result in an infinite loop where they run indefinitely, and then that can use up a big chunk of your system's resources like memory and disk space. Usually, if a loop is detected there's a loop detection mechanism in CRM, which would then cancel processes and plugins that start to have infinite loops. I believe the maximum is 8 loops, I think, or reset after 10 minutes of inactivity. So to answer your question, no, you don't have to add that, but it is a good thing to add in. Some people have asked for other examples on using workflows. There are many different ways to use them. It all kind of depends on your business processes. It's not just sales related. It can be even simple things like if something happens on a record, you have an automatic or you have a workflow that then changes another field, or you have if this condition is met, it creates a new record for something else. So it's hard to answer that question because really workflows have a vast area that they can be useful for. I know that's probably not a very good answer for you, but if I have a little more background, feel free just to email me and I can give you a few examples how a workflow could really help in automating some of your tasks as you build your architecture for the CRM. All right, doesn't look like there's too many more coming in. Again, feel free to email me with any questions you think of later. I would be happy to answer them. And then any feedback you want to provide would be greatly appreciated. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and thank you once again for attending the webinar.